The things that we're discussing, of course, are critical in the parenting situation, but most of them are also very important in any walk of life. For example, eye contact and the way that it's reaffirming and what it does. Physical contact, we've mentioned that even the elderly in nursing homes benefit from physical contact. So these things are not limited to just children, and I think we'll find that to be also true of the idea of focused attention. And before I start talking about focused attention in a parenting situation, I'm going to go off on a little tangent to start with and talk about the importance of attention management in our own lives and the benefit for us to focus instead of going everywhere. There's an article that I downloaded a while back about attention management and how we can benefit in our own lives from that. And he points out that one of the best insights into productivity in the 21st century comes from 1890. And a man named William James said, "My experience is what I agree to attend to." In other words, my attention determines my experiences, and the experiences determine the life that I live. And so I decide what my life is going to be by what I pay attention to. And attention management involves controlling distractions, always being present in the moment, maximizing focus, being intentional instead of reactive. And you can see where these things are important also in dealing with children as well as in our own lives. He suggests that you control external factors in your lives, and the number one thing he says is control your technology. No surprise there. That technology is here to serve us, not the other way around. We're not here to serve technology. And so we actually can turn off email and turn off notifications. Did you know that you can do that? Yeah, you can turn you can turn the phone to silent, and you can put it out of sight. You can actually put it where you don't see it. And then control your environment. At work, set aside a time maybe when people don't bother you, or I put a do not disturb sign up or something. You can actually control that, believe it or not. He says that actually being tethered to your email inbox conditions you to expect interruptions every few minutes. If you keep checking it, you condition yourself to stop frequently to do something. And so we get in the habit sometimes of doing things as soon as we think about it, because we're afraid we'll forget it, and some of us, there's a reason why we might forget it. But for you younger folks, you should have a little bit better attention span. And then he also says we must control internal factors to control our behavior, unplug technology completely for a while, an hour or more, and control your thoughts. He said that's the hardest one of all, but keep putting yourself back focused on what you're wanting to do. If there's something that comes up, write it down, come back to it later. I try that. It doesn't work so well, but jot it down and come back to it later. But focused attention is something I think that we could all benefit from because of the lives that we live and the technology that we deal with. It's becoming a greater and greater problem in our own well-being, our mental and emotional and social well-being, and then also just in our overall health. It would work. It might not work. You know, just push it for me. Focused attention is different from eye contact and physical contact because it requires time. You know, the physical or the eye contact we've been talking about doesn't really cost you anything. You can do it while you're doing everything else. And physical contact does not cost you anything. You just add it to what you're doing. But focused attention takes time, and time may be one of your most precious commodities. And so it's different from the other two things we've talked about in that it requires time. Okay, and here is the, if you want a longer definition of what focused attention is, it provides a child with full, undivided attention in such a way that the child feels without doubt completely loved. So what does that mean?
They're secure.
What's that?
They're secure.
Yeah, and that's the result is it shows you care. But the point is it's total. You know, when you talk about full, undivided, without, completely, that's how the child should feel. That the child is valuable enough in his or her own right to warrant the parents' undistracted watchfulness, appreciation, and uncompromising regard. But you just notice all of those superlatives in there? That the child realizes how important they are because they are the center of your attention, not a center of your attention. It makes the child feel like they are the most important person in the world in their parents' eyes. What does the Bible say about children? What should our attitude be about children? Somebody want to find Genesis 33 and verse 5? In Genesis 33, Jacob is meeting Esau. And as Esau meets him, Esau says, "Who are these?" And what does it say in verse 5 there? What's Isaac's, or Jacob's response, I mean?
The children whom God has graciously given your servant.
These are the children whom God has graciously given your servant. So how does Jacob consider his children?
They're from God.
It's a gift from God. He considers that his children are a gift from God. Psalm 127. In verse 3. So again, children are a gift of God, a gift of the Lord. And then in Mark chapter 10, we see Jesus' attitude about children. The people are bringing children to Jesus so that he could touch them, and the disciples are trying to stop them. And what does Jesus say? Permit the children to come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it at all. And he took them in his arms and began blessing them, laying his hands on them. And so, how does the Bible regard children? As a blessing from God. Are they worth some time then? Are they worth investing a little bit of time? Each child should feel like he or she is unique, one of a kind. Sadly, that goes counter to our society because our society is controlled by the tyranny of the urgent. What is the tyranny of the urgent? It has to be done. It has to be done right now. And guess what's the most guilty party? Many years ago, a sociology professor told us that if she has an appointment with somebody, she'll sometimes call and say, what time do I really get to go in? Because they will answer the phone and tell her that. And you know, if you're sitting there having an appointment with somebody and the phone rings, what do? They answer the phone, because we've gotten this idea that the phone has to be answered. It hasn't gotten any better with smartphones. This was back in the time when nobody even imagined such a thing, and we still used cans tied to string stretched out over the backyard. And back then, if you wanted somebody's undivided attention, you called them on the telephone. And today it's the same thing. And so we have this tyranny of the urgent, and number one on the list is our smartphone. And so we find ourselves where we are controlled by the urgent and we don't have time to take care of the important. There are things that are important and things that are urgent, and sadly the important gives way to the urgent. So what are the priorities in your life? You may not want to answer that out loud, but think about what the priorities in your life. Now we voice priorities. You know, we know the right answers to give, but the priorities are determined by what we actually do and how we actually spend our time. And so we can say whatever we want to, but the proof's in the pudding. And so think about what your priorities are. In our society, what do you think they're going to be? What's that? Job? Job or work? What else? Are a lot of people driven by money as the top priority in our society, even though they may not admit it? Some people are driven by power, and some people are driven by prestige, importance, fame. So those are some of the most important things in our society. What should our list look like? Ideally, what would the list look like? What's that? Yeah, ultimately God first and others, but that would be a good one. But in a family situation, probably God first, your spouse, and then your children or child. And you do realize that if you spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you wouldn't be able to take care of all the urgent things in your life. You wouldn't get them done. And so there's a benefit of focusing on and deciding what's really important and sticking with it. We need to understand some important things in dealing with children. One is we do not know and we cannot plan how many opportunities we will have. And you you won't have an opportunity every day to express your focused attention to a child. There was a man on his 50th birthday. His son came up in his lap and started kissing him on the cheek repeatedly. And he was kind of depressed and irritated, and he said, "What are you doing?" And the little boy said, "I'm giving you 50 kisses for your birthday." And the dad said, "Let's do that some other time." And that's an opportunity that would never present itself again, because he had told the child exactly what that was worth to him. There's a man named Charles Francis Adams, and the son of John Quincy Adams and grandson of John Adams. During the Civil War, he was Abraham Lincoln's ambassador to Great Britain, and his job was to keep England from coming in on the side of the Confederacy. And in his diary, he had a note about a day he spent with his 8-year-old son. And he said, "Went fishing today with my son, a day wasted. My son seemed bored and preoccupied, saying very little." On that same day, the child had this entry in his diary: "Went fishing with my father, the most glorious day of my life." And he kept referring to that for 40 years of his life. What a wonderful day that was when his father took him fishing. To his father, it was a day wasted. And to him, it was one of the most wonderful days in his life. And so we don't know when these opportunities are going to present themselves, but we need to take advantage of them whenever we have an opportunity.
Maybe there's something to be said to just be together in silence.
Yes, and
Talking doesn't mean anything.
yeah, and you're exactly right. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. In fact, it's right here. The best way to give a child focused attention is to set aside time to spend with the child alone. And my personal confession, being the father of twins, the one thing I regret more than anything is not taking each one individually to do something. Not going down to the corner and getting ice cream with one, and going down to the corner and getting ice cream with the other one on another occasion. Because with twins, everything is done together. Birthdays, everything is, no matter how hard you try, it's one unit. And that is my one regret. One of my regrets is not taking them individually to go do something, even something insignificant, because that doesn't matter what it is. That we need to set aside time with each child alone to show them that they are the focus of our attention. It's becoming increasingly important because there's so many outside forces anymore that take up the child's time. And it may be easy for us to mistakenly think that if we're driving our kids to all their different activities, that's the same thing as focused attention. And it's not. The author of this book tells a story about counseling a 7-year-old girl who was having numerous problems. But as it happens, she was in a family of 10 children, and she was the last one. And they lived on a farm. And by the time they got up and fed and milked and did everything else, with the first 9 children, they'd spend a little bit more time with each one. By the time she came along, she was just one of the group. And she had a lot of problems as a result. We need to look for unexpected opportunities that we don't know are going to come. He compares it to making deposits in a savings account whenever you have an opportunity to do something spontaneous and spend time with the child. Another source that I looked at by someone who wrote a book called Raising happiness, 10 Simple Steps for More Joyful Kids and Happier Parents, said that focus is the single most important thing in rearing children. She says it is the bullseye, the sweet spot of parenting. And so she suggests that that is the single most important thing in a family. She said that many moms feel today as if they're not good mothers unless they are racing around shuttling their children from lessons to practices and back to lessons again. Whoops, I guess I didn't include those 10 things on that slide. You just have to write did I put them on your sheet, those 10 things? Yes. Another researcher asked children to give her advice about being a mother. And she asked what a parent does for them that makes them feel loved and happy. And you have the list there in front of you. Number 1, come into my bedroom at night, tuck me in, and sing me a song. Tell me a story about how, when you were little. Number 2, give me hugs and kisses and sit and talk with me privately. Number 3, spend quality time just with me, not with my brothers and sisters around. You see anything in common in those first 3 things, the top 3 things? Focused attention. Give me nutritious food so I can grow up healthy. At dinner, talk about what we could do together on the weekend. There it comes up again. At night, talk to me about anything, love, school, family, etc. Let me play outside a lot. Cuddle under a blanket and watch our favorite TV show together. Discipline me, it makes me feel like you care. And that's going to be the next thing we talk about. That 4th thing is discipline. And leave special messages in my desk or lunch bag. What is it, 6 out of the 10 that are related to focused attention? And I believe that it's important not just for parents, I think it's important for grandparents and aunts and uncles and friends and whatever to provide undivided attention. What's that? This book came out a long time ago, but this is a new, an updated edition of it. This book came out in '77, but this is a 2015 edition. He's updated a lot of it. But these last 2 things I got off of research on the internet. We do have a few copies of this book, by the way, if some of you would like to have a copy to have. We ordered some, and we have a couple of them left, I think. And so if this could be beneficial to you, please let me know, and I'll give you one. Okay, let's break up into our groups and see what we can find out about focused attention.